Live team coverage coming to you from Butler, Pennsylvania.
All set for President Trump to take the stage. Thousands, and I mean thousands, of people. This is what we see at every rally.
When Trump was in, everything was low, you could live, everything was great. Now it's a disaster.
Prices have gone up about 25%, and it's not the same anymore.
The Biden administration has made our lives worse by every statistical measure.
Democrats, they never accept responsibility. They blame the previous administration.
Stop spending money that we don't have.
Everything is swinging Trump's way.
He's here to protect the kids.
Mentally fit, and he's physically fit for office.
Everything was better when President Trump was in office.
We're going to win Pennsylvania. We're all in this for one common goal, and that is to save this country.
Make our nation great again. Amen. Take a look at what happened.
Live team coverage coming to you from Butler, Pennsylvania.
All set for President Trump to take the stage. Thousands, and I mean thousands, of people. This is what we see at every rally.
When Trump was in, everything was low, you could live, everything was great. Now it's a disaster.
Prices have gone up about 25%, and it's not the same anymore.
The Biden administration has made our lives worse by every statistical measure.
Democrats, they never accept responsibility. They blame the previous administration.
Stop spending money that we don't have.
Everything is swinging Trump's way.
He's here to protect the kids and protect the rest of the country.
He fights for the American people versus all the other people that are coming into our country.
And he's going to fix our nation. Joe Biden's only going to give it to China and Ukraine.
He's the best guy out there. The immigration stuff's got to stop.
He is America's last stand. He is America's last chance. We need a leader who's going to fight.
President Trump is, well, he's mentally fit, and he's physically fit for office.
Everything was better when President Trump was in office.
We're going to win Pennsylvania. We're all in this for one common goal, and that is to save this country.
Make our nation great again. Amen. Take a look at what happened.
I don't even know what to say right now. Apparently, we have shots fired. Apparently, there are medics at the podium right now. Oh my God. Okay, yes! Yes! Unbelievable. Shots fired. Shots fired. And President Trump is making his way off the stage live here. Would you ever imagine that you and I would be talking about an attempted assassination on a president?
I do believe he's going to be okay. He was bleeding from behind his ear.
It was inches away from going into his brain and killing the former president.
Now reporting again that the shooter is dead. A bystander sadly was also killed.
Real America's Voice right now has both the most fact-based and responsible reporting that I can see out there right now.
President Trump is okay. And we look forward to hearing from him hopefully soon.
What we've seen here today will change the course of history to some extent.
The next few days, we'll find out what type of leaders we really have in Washington.
This has been building up to this moment of physically stopping someone from running for president.
I reached out to him and just told him that I believe God has a hand on his shoulder and God has put him here for this moment.
This is the battle we're in. We're in a battle, spiritual battle, where we got to pray, but we also have to have men and women of courage to stand and act.
My biggest fear was they were going to try to kill President Trump because they can't stop him at the ballot box. They can't stop him in the courtroom. God is on his side. If God wasn't on his side, he could be dead right now.
See something that said, take a look at what happened.
Not quite 24 hours now since those awful events took place in Butler County, Pennsylvania. The nation's still coming to terms with the attempted assassination of the former president, Donald Trump, at his own rally. One of his attendees killed in the fire. Two others seriously, grievously wounded. We pray for those families and what they're going to deal with going forward. Joining me, John Solomon. We're here in Milwaukee where the RNC is set to start tomorrow. John, this was the focus of the conversations, who Donald Trump might pick as a running mate. His vice presidential running mate was all the talk, the palace intrigue. That's all gone now. It's a much more important decision now. We'll get into that more during the next couple of hours. But the whole nation's so focused on how this could happen. Systemic failure. We talked to Bernard Carrick earlier on the station here, and he called it a systemic failure. I don't see how you could argue with that at this point, knowing what we know.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, a 20-year-old man gets up on a roof. The roof's unprotected by the Secret Service detail. He gets several shots off. People were flagging the guy before he gets up on the roof. No law enforcement gets there. There is some questions about how they even exited the president afterwards. I think Bernard Carrick has it right. The good news is the president is okay.
He is.
But there is a lot to be learned for. We just learned a little while ago of the hero, 50-year-old firefighter who was shot dead covering his family.
Correct.
The spray of bullets that came. So there was still a lot of tragedy. But more questions than we have answers 23 hours out.
Correct. And one of the things we're keeping an eye on now, we learned that President Joe Biden will address the nation again at 8 p.m. He came out last night briefly for about a minute and a half, not quite. I think most people would consider that woefully inadequate, what he had to say. He didn't pray for the Trump family. He didn't pray for the former president. He didn't offer much in the form of unity. It was fairly an empty comment, really.
Yeah, no, it was very perfunctory. It had no sense of emotion or history to it. And later he reached out to the president, former President Donald Trump, to make sure he was okay. But I think tonight is the do-over. How many times have we seen do-overs in the Biden presidency? This is a second shot to try to get it right. But the country has already figured this out. They've already realized there wasn't leadership last night when we needed it.
That's exactly correct. Now, joining us for the next couple of hours will be Tara Dahl and Miranda Kahn, both from our West Palm Beach studios. Ladies, it's been not quite 24 hours, like I said. I think the shock for a lot of people still setting in. Tara, let's start with you. A lot of national security implications. If a 20-year-old from Pittsburgh can get 152 yards from the president with a rifle, what does that mean for our security from foreign adversaries?
Yeah, that's where a lot of people, when you look online on social media, a lot of people are asking that, you know, how was he able to get up on that building? How was he not spotted? And then it came out as well that they found explosives or bomb-making material in his car and in his home. So there's a lot of questions, and you look at, he's 20 years old. He just graduated high school 2 years ago. He hasn't been in the military. Where did he get his training? You know, just think of someone, like you said, the foreign adversaries, Steve, And then you look at, we just had Biden speak, and who did he have behind him? Alejandro Mayorkas, who's responsible for bringing in millions of illegals that have ties to ISIS, that are Chinese nationals, Hezbollah, Hamas. 2 million known gotaways that we have no idea who they are in our country. So to see him behind Biden, and then you look at the national security threat, you know, you have to ask the questions. Who was behind this? How did a 20-year-old young kid be able to almost attempted this assassination that failed, thank God, by a miracle of God that it did fail. But who's behind it? There's some serious questions. And one thing that Biden said was that I did, as soon as I heard it, did not resonate at all, is trust the FBI to do their jobs. Well, I'm someone that's going to say, no, I do not trust the FBI to do a thorough investigation of who's behind this.
I think that's true of millions of Americans. And Miranda, we'll have you weigh in here in just a moment. But first, I want to get to our first guest. We're going to have a lot of important people here with us, several members of Congress coming up the next couple of hours you're going to want to hear from. But we're going to start with Jonathan Shuttlesworth. He hosts Check the News right here on Real America's Voice. Jonathan, thank you for being here. All right, it's been about 22 hours, just shy of that. As the nation absorbs this shock, and it really is a shock to the system, what are your first takeaways? Jonathan, are you with us?
I don't have any audio.
We'll come back to Jonathan in just a moment. All right, well, we'll come back to him in just a moment. So, Miranda, I'm going to come back to you now as we absorb this shock as a nation collectively. This is a shock to the American family. This is a shock to the nation as a whole. Where are you now about 22 hours after the fact?
Yeah, I think it's still setting in. I mean, yesterday I just kind of went into journalistic mode, you know, if you will. I was actually on the phone with our boss for Real America's Voice, and I said, I think it's just now starting to set in. But I kind of put my emotions aside and was like, you know, that's not my job right now. My job is to gather the facts and present them to the American people and bring some calmness to a very chaotic situation. So, you know, it's sad. It's still shocking. I'm like I said, it's still setting in. And when I look at that, I get chills. When I see him come up and be defiant and resilient with his fist in the air. And I've been, you know, last night I prayed with my husband for Trump's family, the victim's family. And, you know, we did see a slight shift. I mean, obviously the reviews were bad last night when it came to Joe's press briefing. He delivered another one later, like not that long ago. And he did bring up unity several times, which he didn't do last night. He did mention prayers. He did actually speak with President Trump, but he only talked about the firefighter who sadly lost his life, the father of two who was shielding them. But he did. There's a mix of emotion, but he didn't mention the other victims, and I thought that was very odd.
Yeah.
Well, it seems odd to all of us, considering he should have the best information available to Joe Biden, should have it right at his fingertips before
he had just come out of the Situation Room when he gave that briefing. One thing he did call for, and it goes back to our interview with Bernie Carrick a few hours ago, he said that he does believe we need an independent commission to investigate what happened here. That's a big shift for President Biden, who normally likes to keep everything inside. So it tells you how much there is doubt about what happened, that even the president is going to get behind an independent commission.
And when I say mix of emotion, I felt everything that Miranda felt. You know, there's this urge to tear up in some way, to say, you know, almost that 9/11 feeling of what a horrible thing to have happen. But there's also anger. How do we let a 20-year-old get to 152 yards with a clean shot? With a clean shot. All right, we're going to bring in Jonathan Shuttlesworth now. He hosts Check the News here on Real America's Voice. Jonathan, 22 hours after the fact, the nation absorbing this shock, as I mentioned, what are your first reactions?
I'm 40 minutes south of where it took place. My wife was planning on going. It's one county north of me. I'm stunned. I'm stunned that happened. I think even though I'm a pastor, I don't like to write things off to supernatural protection. In this case, I do believe it was the hand of God taking something that the devil meant to destroy our country, and it's going to flip it. I don't see any way the Biden campaign can come back from this now. And I think that's the main takeaway, other than obviously the tragedy and loss of life, which is awful. But this flipped everything. Trump was already up in the polls. There's none out since this happened. I don't see him not cleaning up in the election. I don't think there's enough ballot printing machines to do anything about it.
Yeah, you know, and John, I think that's what struck a lot of us. You know, he gets knocked to the floor. Yep. He gets shot, and he says, wait. And he makes sure that he assures the nation that he is okay. Somehow he survives. And look, it's a half an inch.
It is.
And the whole story is different. And people say, I mean, it's half an inch. And all he has to do is turn his head slightly. And Jonathan, I don't disagree with you there. That could be really a divine intervention.
Yeah, listen, it is a miracle that he's alive. It's a miracle that more people weren't wounded. You look at the bullet that goes right by the president's head in the other direction, not by the ear that he gets hit, and you realize how close this was. Again, the biggest question now is, how are we going to keep people secure? And what happened to the Secret Service, an agency that we've just come to be so good? Expect them always to get the job done right.
Epic failure.
And there does seem to be some question of failure and resourcing as well. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. There are a lot of brave men and women in the Secret Service, but there clearly were some glaring security lapses in this event.
Jonathan, let me ask you this. Obviously, you're there in the state of Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania was already trending toward Donald Trump, and I think you're exactly on the money here. I think it puts Pennsylvania in Trump's column. I don't think it's coming back for Joe Biden, and I don't think it will come back for any other Democrat for that matter. What say you?
I'm with you. Trump, the real clear polling average was +5 going into this. So I think it's over. Trump won at a -4 in 2016. He led in the polls for like 3 days ever. So to be in a position where you're +2, +3 before this happened, I think he's going to get a massive bump in the polls. And to your Secret Service point, when you watch, nobody wants to be a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes it's hard not to be. When you watch Secret Service have eyes on the guy on the roof for 7 minutes before it happened. We were watching the video before we came on Real America's Voice. You know, they're looking at him. They had him sighted in. That's how they shot him so quickly after the assassin fired the bullet. What? I'd like to hear the explanation. If you say that's crazy, what's the explanation for what went on yesterday? How do you see somebody on a roof 150 yards from a presidential candidate? And I don't care if it's a lady in a sundress with strawberries. She should be tackled, let alone a guy bear crawling on the roof with a rifle. You assume he's a law enforcement agent? That I want answers.
Yeah. And
people
Jonathan,
were screaming out at the guy to the police. That's one of the things.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It was, you know, and you're seeing on social media that it wasn't the Secret Service that saved Trump. It was Trump supporters that saved him, or when he turned his head. And so the fact that you had the bystanders for 2 to 3 minutes, he said that witness said that on the BBC interview. For 2 to 3 minutes, he said, I was trying to notify the law enforcement. But Jonathan, I want to ask you, as a pastor, you know, in Pennsylvania, what are you hearing? You know, the power of prayer. Clearly, we saw the hand of God yesterday in this moment. We saw prayers being answered. Can you just talk to us about the importance of prayer, the importance of turning back to God right now in our nation?
Well, the scripture that's quoted all the time, 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people that are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. That's why it's important to pray for a nation, because what did you see yesterday? That's the top security firm that you could have access to in the world, and they were useless. So without the hand of God, the hand of man can't do much. But the reason I've never given up on America is because you still have God in the mix. And God said he would never get so angry at a nation that he would abandon them. If you ever will call on me, I will hear you and I will heal your land. And I think what we saw 24 hours ago, not even 24 hours ago, is what the devil meant for bad. God has a great way all through the Bible. When the devil does something to destroy something, God flips it on him and uses it for good. And that's exactly what this is.
Jonathan Shuttlesworth, thank you for being here. You can catch him here on Real America's Voice. Check the News, his program here every weekend. Jonathan, thank you for your perspective. And you know, John, I would say there are several incidents in America's history where you look at it and you go, that's not really possible. Whether it's George Washington, the Battle of Midway in World War II, where you're completely outnumbered, impossible to win, and you feel like something divine has happened. I think millions of Americans feel that way today about, again, half an inch.
No, there's no doubt about it. And still, so many questions that we're going to need to learn. What was the motive of this man? Was he working with someone else? It is just remarkable. We're very lucky to be joined by an FBI whistleblower. I've been very familiar with his story. He's a patriot who has blown the whistle on the FBI, particularly the politicalization. What makes former Agent Steve Friend so amazing for this conversation, he used to be on the FBI tactical team, the SWAT team.
Right.
He knows exactly what happens in these moments. Steve, good to have you on. You've had a little bit of time to think about this. Are you shocked about what you saw in terms of the security reaction in the moments before and after the shooting?
Well, thanks again for having me on today. Look, here's my takeaway here. We're sort of in this holding pattern with a lot of the details, and that's always the qualifier. You have to say we have to wait for more things to flesh themselves out during an investigation. Right. I'm a little bit hesitant to wait on the FBI to carry forward this investigation, seeing as how they've meddled in the last 2 presidential elections. I'm sort of thinking that we're more likely to get a decade pass by without finding any sort of manifesto or motivation about this individual. But as far as the tactical component here, I mean, this guy was able to set up about 150 yards away from the stage. There's some major security failure. This is a catastrophic failure as far as site surveys go. But I will want to commend the guys that were on the ground there and quick to react. Watching the video, it's about 1.5 seconds from the first shot firing to when Donald Trump reacts to it, and a 2.5 seconds total elapsed before the Secret Service body guys are actually on him, and 6 seconds before they're able to return accurate fire on the shooter in this case. So I think those guys need to be commended, because the tendency in any sort of crisis situation is not to fight, not to flight, it's to freeze. And their training kicked in and they were able to respond in that fashion. But as far as the setup goes, a lot of questions here at this point.
What's your biggest question, though, right now? Because all of us have been going through the video, watching it multiple times. There's been, accusations that DEI got in the way. We've seen one of the Secret Service members, a woman, not able to get her gun where it needs to be. Another one seeming like, where are we going? What are we doing? Steve brought up earlier, they didn't seem tall enough. Tara brought it up that they should have been shielding him better. So we're not the experts, you are, but the biggest question that you have right now, if you were running the investigation, what would it be?
Well, I'd be remiss in not mentioning that the Secret Service, very much like the FBI, is all in for the 30 by 30 initiative, where they're trying to have 30% of their armed agents be females by 2030. So there's a DEI aspect to that. But as far as this particular thing, I want to look at the site survey. I want to look at the way that the operations plan was set up. There was going to be fields of fire. There's 360-degree coverage there. I just can't fathom a way where somebody was able to get that close at a vantage point, which is essentially a sniper's nest, and not have it come across the counter sniper team. That to me is a catastrophic failure, or there's something else nefarious afoot here. I want an explanation for that. I'm not going to hold my breath on an FBI investigation. That's why I would actually like to see the congressional Republicans, as part of their budget fight, fund an independent investigation that runs parallel to what the FBI is able to do, so that we can have maybe a little bit of transparency.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, I want to get into a couple of things here. First of all, it is remarkable, truly remarkable, that he survived this attempt, considering that rifle has an effective range out to about 500 yards if somebody knows how to use the weapon. And it's obviously the young man that died there, the fire chief, a very lethal weapon at that distance. So I'm concerned about 2 things. Number one is that we saw the Secret Service lined up with their rifle on him, apparently with him in sights, didn't fire for a period of time, maybe a couple of minutes, we've been told. And the second thing that has come to our attention is the communications from the outer ring to the podium was non-existent, because if they knew there was a man with a rifle on a roof, wouldn't they make that information known to the Secret Service at the podium and get the president out of harm's way before shots are ever fired?
Absolutely. That would be the expectation. I mean, this is their Super Bowl. I mean, this is every day that they strap on their gun and their badge. They have to be prepared for the worst moment. You never take any moment for granted that it's just going to be a normal day at the office. Communication is key in anything when it comes to law enforcement, particularly with dignitary protection. But I mean, just simply a fleeing felon. I mean, communication goes on. The radio can run faster than anyone. And the fact that they were unable from the perimeter to get in touch with the body people in an immediate fashion and get him out of there, because you have to presume that there's a threat there. That's your job. And then they failed to do that, to me, is a tremendous question. And then, like you said, if indeed the counter sniper team had advantage where they could see this individual setting up and for them to hold off on that, are there any sort of rules of engagement that were different than they typically are? But because it's my understanding that if there's a perceived threat, they're cleared hot.
Yeah, Steve, I want to ask you too, there's reports, about the multiple shots that were fired from the shooter initially. You saw the one first round that nicked the president's ear, but what about the other shots? Have you heard anything on that before the snipers were able to take out the shooter?
Not from that initial burst. I mean, you're able to send rounds downrange pretty quickly with that type of rifle. And so sending a second round after, if you had perception that you'd miss your shot, that's entirely possible. Watching the video myself and then consulting with other people who have similar subject matter expertise as me, I think that the subsequent shots that you hear there are actually the counter sniper agents that are returning fire there, which is within 5 to 6 seconds, and they're able to respond. So the technology ability that they have here, where they're able to actually perceive shooting and they're being told to look for it, so they're not looking for a 360-degree area. They do have a division of responsibility where you're only responsible for a certain portion, but to then make sure that that information gets relayed to the right person, it's pretty impressive, which is why, regardless of the failures of the initial setup in the perimeter, the people that were there, with the exception of the female agents that seem to be more interested in holding onto their sunglasses than protecting President Trump, I think they need to be commended.
Yeah, it makes me think about something here. The most important question that Steve put up there is rules of engagement.
That's
what
right.
are the rules of engagement? It made me think about Abbey-gate, Afghanistan, when we know that the snipers had the bombers in sight and didn't fire. If they had this man in sight and didn't fire, we have to know why.
Yeah, that is one of the most important questions in talking to lawmakers, Steve, that I've had today. They want to know if there were some rules of engagement that kept a pause or delay in the sniper team from taking action. That is something that the radio traffic will show as they get deeper into this. But you're right. Everyone's calling for that independent investigation. Bernie Carrick did it earlier today. Seems like President Biden is there as well. It's going to be important for the credibility of the findings to have some independence in this review.
Certainly. Steve Friend will give you the last word here.
I'd like to see an independent investigation go on. I would also like to see it done in haste. The FBI has been proven to have meddled in the last 2 presidential elections, and if they're able to bury this as evidence in an ongoing investigation to go beyond the November day of election, I think they'd be derelict in that duty. All haste needs to be here, and I think if you had an independent investigation running parallel, you'd be able to actually achieve that in the next few months.
All right, Steve Friend. Really appreciate it. Good information. And I think that is the question. Rules of engagement. I need to know. He brought that up, a very important question. All right. Real America's Voice continuing coverage of the attempted assassination on the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, in Butler County, Pennsylvania, will continue in just a moment.
This is the most important night of Joe Biden's presidency.
We're all going to learn whether or not it was a good idea or an epic failure.
It's the one shot he's got to get even.
It's a powerful moment.
President Trump is extremely sharp.
He's going to bring 1 billion people to worldwide tonight, the most watched political event.
I think President Trump is going to hit a home run tonight.
People are turning towards Trump.
There are people out there that are hurting, that want hope,
This is an important night for our country.
that want to hear from someone how they're going to make their life better.
The American people are suffering.
Biden's lies aren't going to work anymore. The American people can't be fooled anymore.
It's very expensive to live right now, and up underneath President Trump's leadership, we didn't have this.
Patriots on their feet and can't wait for this debate. Is there a Joe Biden watch party anywhere?
I have not heard of any Joe Biden debate watch parties.
It's been a great night with you guys, but we want to go out to the CNN debate right now.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate.
He inherited almost no inflation, and then it blew up under his leadership.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with.
What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
The idea that they're gonna, I'm proposing that everybody, they pay the millionaires.
Our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance.
I'm Lou, MAGA pilot from Ransketter Chat, here in beautiful Trump County, Florida. The best place for real news is Real America's Voice.
Hi, this is Kelly Renee from Northern California Hills, MAGA country. The reason I watch Real America's Voice is for the faith, the family, and the freedom. Giddy up!
Hello, all you Ravagers. I'm Billy Howell, your old buddy Carefree Largo from the chat, and I'm thrilled to be part of the Rav family. When I want to be heard, I use my Real America's Voice.
Hey guys, my name is Jeff. I'm from Massachusetts. I love Rav because of the free speech and the political wranglings that go on in the chat every day.
Welcome back to Real America's Voice. Continuing coverage from Milwaukee, where the Republican National Convention will kick off tomorrow, Monday. We've got a lot of breaking news to bring to you now. John Solomon sitting here with me, always on top of Just the News. If you want to keep up with you, justthenews.com. You've got two important stories.
Two very important developments. So word just 2 minutes ago, President Trump will be coming to the Republican National Committee Convention tonight. He's arriving in Milwaukee tonight. It's a little bit earlier than expected.
Right.
Sets up a potential announcement tomorrow morning or tonight
VP.
with the vice president. Yep. But that's the first thing, so we know what the president's movement is. The second big piece of news, we've been wondering what happened on that roof after people began warning the police officers. The Associated Press is quoting local law enforcement, confirming that an officer climbed to the roof, encountered the shooter. The shooter shot at him. He began to go back down the ladder to find some safety before the shooter then turned his gun on President Trump. That further raises those questions that we've been saying about what's communicating on the outer perimeter and the officers on the front of.
So here's my question, and what we have to sort out.
Yep.
How long between shots, if he shot at the police officer, how did the Secret Service on the podium not know that there had been a shot fired anywhere within a mile of that place, right? That would be my question, and it brings me back to rules of engagement. John, that's huge news.
It is. We'll see if we can get that confirmed ourselves, but the Associated Press has that.
All right. Well, joining us now, Lara Logan, needs no introduction, of course. Somebody who has traveled the world, been in hot landing zones all over. Lara, greatly appreciate you being here. 22 hours now, and the question here is, how can a Secret Service agent appear to have the shooter in his sights and not pull the trigger before the shooter started firing at Donald Trump? It's a remarkable circumstance that Donald Trump survived that assassination attempt. 22 hours on, what are your takeaways?
Well, like John, right, I'm a real journalist, so I'm always very conscious of what we don't know. And as he pointed out, there's some very significant questions that need to be answered here. But since that is such a significant point, I did speak to a number of snipers this morning. One of them was a counter sniper on a presidential detail for many, many years. And I spoke to other people in law enforcement and asked that very question, right? If you see somebody with a rifle, how long is it, if you're on counter sniper detail, right? How long is it before you can take that shot? And who's calling the shots there? And so one of the snipers that I spoke to said, when you see somebody, remember, they're using very sophisticated scopes. So what they see through their scope is very different to what we see with the naked eye. And yet the shooter was so close to where Trump was speaking. We were roughly around 150 meters, right? And if you look at the average U.S. soldier in the infantry is trained to be a marksman from 300 meters just through your iron sights without a scope or anything like that. And everyone I've spoken to who knows how to shoot or was trained says you could literally, the Secret Service that were with Trump inside the venue could have looked up and seen that shooter on that roof. That's how close he was. Right. And so and for people to understand, it's not just the Secret Service detail that's on the ground that is responsible for the security at that event. Before anything happens anywhere, there is always an advance team. And it is the responsibility of the advance team to go in there and look at every single possibility and to take absolute and clear control of the entire area. So there should be no cluster of buildings within easy range of where the president is going to be speaking that you do not have absolute control. And your point about the communications between the guy taking the shot or the people outside who could see this person with a rifle and the team that's inside, which allowed, where you see no indication from them that they're aware of any issue before the first shots are fired, that is a very significant question for anyone who works on this and who has run those kind of details or been on those details. They know that should never have happened. So there's a breakdown there. And most importantly, when you say to people, okay, well, how long before you can take that shot? I mean, if you see someone with a weapon pointed at the president, I mean, you take the shot. It should be instant. I mean, it's seconds, right? And so, I mean, John, that you reported from the Associated
should be very
Press.
Straightforward.
That's right. The rules of engagement do not really change. Okay, and so that's a question here. What were the rules of engagement? What were the instructions from the advance team? Did they or did they not have full control over the area? I mean, obviously they didn't, because somebody breached that perimeter and was able to climb that building. And, if they're reporting from the Associated Press that you just mentioned, John, if that's accurate, that raises even more questions. It is not uncommon for Secret Service to use local law enforcement, right? I mean, that's very typical. But I think one of the unspoken things here that is not being addressed is what has happened internally within the Secret Service. There were other protocols that were not followed. For example, the principal who you're protecting is not supposed to walk. Right? You're supposed to pick them up and take them to the armored vehicle. Now, perhaps that wasn't possible in this situation. Perhaps there wasn't room for the armored vehicle. That's why they had to bring the vehicle to where, that's why they had to bring Trump to that vehicle. And he's ambulatory at the time, but it certainly raises questions from people who are trained in this, because those are not the ideal protocols to have been followed. They may have been dictated by the circumstances. We just don't know enough. We're not inside the investigation. But the things that do not make sense to anyone is that there is no way that a Secret Service detail, advanced detail, can go into that area and not secure those buildings. The one thing that none of the people who are trained in this believe is that they had no oversight over those buildings. That is the hardest thing for them to come to terms with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Laura, this Secret Service has had signs of distress for the last year or so. We had the video footage about 8 months ago that we broke here in Real America's Voice, where they let Kamala Harris go by an undetected explosive device at the Democratic National Committee. There's been altercations on the job between supervisors and an agent. And there have been other warning signs. In fact, just 2 months ago, agents for the Secret Service were circulating a petition trying to get attention to Congress that the agency was in some distress. How does that sort of affect the early look that an independent commission or Congress may take at this?
Well, let me put it to you the way that one law enforcement officer put it to me when I spoke to him about this. His words were that the political class, basically what they've done inside these agencies, and it's not just the Secret Service, it's all across the board, from the FBI to the military and so on, is they have allowed the political class to push out the warriors or the warrior clan, if you like. And so you have this systematic breakdown of these organizations from within. And to, many of the people involved, this is what you're looking at. Because if you will often see, if you've been to Mar-a-Lago or other places, that a lot of the Secret Service agents are very young. Sometimes you see them and they're not in good shape. Other times, you see a lot more women. It has been reported, obviously, that the head of the Secret Service is a female, and she's got these goals of getting the Secret Service 30% female. I'm a strong, independent woman, right? I mean, I climbed mountains in Afghanistan when I was 8.5 months pregnant in full body armor, carrying a pack. Okay, so I am not suggesting for 1 second that women shouldn't rise in any profession. However, there are, serious questions to be asked when your hiring priorities are not the efficiency and the skill of your institution and your systems and your standards and your personnel. When that is not your priority, there are many people within law enforcement and within the military today who believe that this was inevitable, that you were going to see this. Now, at the same time, I don't want to be giving anybody a free pass and playing the, it was a failure of security, right? I mean, when people said January 6th was a failure of training and a failure of security, that was just ridiculous, because obviously it wasn't. That doesn't give people a free pass. You set the conditions to get the result that you want. It's no secret. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand that when you go into combat, you really don't care about anything else except that the person to your left or to your right is the best possible fighter that you can get. You don't want pilots. Exactly. When you've got an airplane in the sky, nobody wants a pilot that was hired because of the color of their skin. Nobody. Regardless of what the color of their skin is, right? Is what you want is to land safely. So it's the same thing here. If you erode your institutions with an ideology that clearly at its core is designed to break down the efficiency and the skill and the operational environment of that organization, you end up with what you have here. And the scary part about this, when you look at the military, is there are very legitimate questions that need to be asked about what is the United States' capability today to defend itself, right? What is the United States' capability given the fact that so many people have been pushed out of the military because they voted for President Trump or because their political views do not align with the military itself? And not only that, the military is not meeting its recruiting goals. That is no secret. And so what are they doing? They're lowering the standards. And then on top of that, you have, many people that have been speaking out because of what has happened to the vaccine injured. There's all the people who were forced out because of the vaccines, but there's also the vaccine injured, right, who are not fully operational or otherwise have been forced out. But to your point, John, your question about what is this, where does this leave Congress and the people investigating this? The one thing that I would say is I would echo what Bernie Kerik, former police commissioner of New York, has already said, right, which is that this investigation, or these investigations, if there are multiple, they just will have no credibility if they are carried out by people with political motives. Right. You cannot have an FBI that has been complicit in the most serious seditious conspiracy since 1776, basically, in the founding of this country. We have never seen anything like what happened. The collusion across the agencies, from the intelligence agencies to the FBI to the Department of Justice, to the political organizations. Let's not forget, John, I know you've done so much reporting on this, and honestly, you were so far ahead of everybody on Ukraine. Your reporting was so important there because, what you revealed is that you have non-governmental organizations who are using the United States government as an arm of their political ideology, that were running U.S. policy through the U.S. embassies paid for by U.S. taxpayers. And when you exposed that, what happened? They went after you, and the FBI and the intelligence agencies and the political establishment from both parties, they closed ranks to punish people who tell the truth. There are real whistleblowers who have been exposing the federal government, for example, on what they've discovered at the southern border and how they are actually trafficking hundreds of thousands of kids. And what is the response to that? You get a political response, right? Instead of people saying, this is reprehensible, no American, whether they're Democrat or Republican, wants their tax dollars spent on trafficking kids, which, let's face it, is the industrialized and organized rape and murder of children for money, right? That's what you're talking about. They don't want that done with their tax dollars. Yeah. So whatever committee looks into this right now is going to have to be, there has to be independent investigators that are going to get to the truth of this.
Has to be outside eyes.
That's
no question.
Otherwise,
has to be outside eyes.
It has to be outside eyes. It cannot be like the January 6th Select Committee, which was a complete charade,
That's right.
which violated all of the rules, which was just, which was just designed to further a false narrative and really persecute and torture Americans for exercising
I don't
their
think America will
constitutional
accept
rights.
that now. Yeah, I don't think America will accept that right now.
9/11.
All right, Logan, greatly appreciate your insights and your experience on this. I think that there has to be an independent survey, an independent investigation, not the FBI, not the Secret Service. Lara Logan, thank you very much. I mean, we have to figure out what happened here.
We do. The country's trust in its institutions are at an all-time low, and the last thing you want is a lack of trust in the Secret Service, given the lack of trust you already have in the FBI. We got to get outside this and get it quickly. I think the other point that Steve Friend made, speed matters in this time. We've got 4 more months of protecting presidential candidates, RFK, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. Knowing in days, not months, is going to be an important piece, at least the early factors.
And in case you're just joining us, John, breaking the news now that Donald Trump will be here in Milwaukee tonight.
That's right.
So that's a big bit of a news breaking here.
Yep.
Will he announce a VP tonight, tomorrow morning? Well, they're supposed to vote on it tomorrow afternoon. I guess we'll find out.
Have to do it pretty soon.
Continuing coverage of the attempted assassination of the 45th President of the United States here on Real America's Voice will continue in a moment.
This is the most important night of Joe Biden's presidency.
We're all going to learn whether or not it was a good idea or an epic failure.
It's the one shot he's got to get even.
It's a powerful moment.
President Trump is extremely sharp.
He's going to bring 1 billion people to worldwide tonight, the most watched political event.
I think President Trump is going to hit a home run tonight.
People are turning towards Trump.
There are people out there that are hurting, that want hope.
This is an important night for our country.
That want to hear from someone how they're going to make their life better.
The American people are suffering.
Biden's lies aren't going to work anymore. The American people can't be fooled anymore.
It's very expensive to live right now, and up underneath President Trump's leadership, we didn't have this.
Patriots on their feet and can't wait for this debate.
Is there a Joe Biden watch party anywhere?
I have not heard of any Joe Biden debate watch parties.
It's been a great night with you guys, but we want to go out to the CNN debate right now.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate.
He inherited almost no inflation, and then it blew up under his leadership.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with.
What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
The idea that they're going to, I've been proposing that everybody, they pay the millionaires.
Our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance.
I'm Lou, Mega Pilot from Rav's Getter Chat here in beautiful Trump County, Florida. The best place for real news is Real America's Voice.
Hi, this is Kelly Renee from Northern California Hills, MAGA country. The reason I watch Real America's Voice is for the faith, the family, and the freedom. Giddy up!
Hello, all you Ravagers. I'm Billy Howell, your old buddy Carefree Largo from the chat, and I'm thrilled to be part of the Rav family. When I want to be heard, I use my Real America's Voice.
Hey guys, my name is Jeff. I'm from Massachusetts. I love Rav because of the free speech and the political wranglings that go on in the chat every day.
Welcome back to Milwaukee, where the Republican National Convention will begin tomorrow, Monday, but we have just learned Donald Trump coming into town tonight. Chatter on Twitter, apparently, according to some folks here. Nikki Haley could be in town. We don't know what that means. Don't know if it's true. It's unverified, but I'm just sharing that with you. Now, I do want to share with you what Donald Trump just released here, John. I'll share it with you. Post on Truth Social. Based on yesterday's terrible events, I was going to delay my trip to Wisconsin and the Republican National Convention by 2 days. But I've just decided that I cannot allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to scheduling or anything else. Therefore, I'll be leaving for Milwaukee as scheduled at 3:30 p.m. today. Thank you. Donald J. Trump. I think it's an incredibly important move. Look, when he came up from the floor yesterday and raised his fist and said, "Fight," it's an iconic image that will live in America forever. Him coming to Milwaukee early is a power move, I say. And honestly, I believe this election's over.
Well, listen, there's one thing the president has said and projected every second in this crisis. First off, be defiant. Don't allow the people who are trying to ruin this country to have their way. And that you see this again today. I was going to take a couple days and delay it. No, I'm showing up. I'm staying on schedule. No shooter is going to stop me. The second is resilience. Get off the ground and just keep fighting. There's too much at stake. And I think the president really has done that with words and actions over the last 23 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Congressman Andy Biggs joining us now to weigh in on this. Congressman, 23 hours, horrible events in Pennsylvania. And let's just be honest about this again. But for about a half an inch, and but for the grace of God, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. Congressman, thank you for being here. What are your impressions so far?
Yeah, my first impression is, President Trump has demonstrated that he is an incredible, resilient leader for a country that needs his leadership, his resilience, his optimism. He's the most optimistic person I know. He's also one of the strongest persons I know. And then thank God for, it's just a quick turn of the head that probably saved his life and saved this country and from the difficulties that would come if he had been assassinated. Of course, thoughts and prayers go out to the gentleman who was killed and his family and the others that were hurt and maimed by this guy. But, there's a lot to be said here, Steve and John, and not the least of which is we've got to investigate what looks like potential holes in the preparation for that rally and protecting the president that we have to do to President Trump, Biden, and RFK and other candidates going forward until this election is over.
Yeah. Congressman, on that point, we were talking in the break, and you made this very important point. A lot of times Congress has the luxury, we'll do it in weeks or months, but you have
John,
three major candidates you're trying to protect right now.
I can't hear you, John.
Okay, let me try again, sir. Can you hear me now? All right. You may have lost them there.
A little bit of a difficulty there.
Yeah.
When he comes back. Go ahead.
Okay, so Congressman, sometimes Congress has the luxury of waiting 2 or 3, 4 weeks and doing a long tail investigation, but you got three major candidates to protect now. Speed matters in these initial reviews, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, I would urge the Speaker to actually appoint immediately a special investigation. And we can't, because I don't think it can be the inspectors general, and certainly can't be Congress. I mean, Congress needs to do its due diligence and oversight as well, but it needs to be a special investigation going right now, a la, a real serious group of people, not a J6 commission. It needs to be real investigators doing real investigation work right now.
Yeah, Congressman, I just want to ask you, follow up on that. When, President Biden just spoke and he mentioned doing an independent review. What do you think he has in mind with that?
Oh, one can only imagine. I don't know what President Biden has in mind, but what I have in mind is skilled, objective investigators who are very experienced, who can get in and actually get the information. And I mean, Congress's backup is going to have to make sure that there's no hindrance, there's no loss of evidence. It all has to go, and these investigators need to get on the ground like ASAP if we're going to get to the bottom of this.
Congressman, I have two questions for you. What has struck you the most in the past 24 hours? And what do you anticipate to hear during Joe's next press briefing?
Well, I think the first things that strike you are that, how incredibly resilient Donald Trump is. Okay, I mean, that was just really obvious right away. And what a blessing and miracle it was that he was not killed yesterday. Those things come off the top. Other things that come to my mind are, how in the world do we get this kind of basically this individual who wants to assassinate Donald Trump? And I think of the rhetoric that's out there. I think of, I was so ticked off as I remembered early on. I mean, almost immediately, I thought, this is what Benny Thompson was trying to do. He was trying to get rid of the social, the protection for Donald Trump with his bill. And that's the kind of rhetoric. And at the time when that came out, and I probably was talking to you, John, when that came out, I said, this is basically someone who's saying, we're going to give you license to try to kill Donald Trump. They've tried every which way they possibly can to get at Donald Trump. And now you resort to this. And that's the problems that we have. Those are some of the thoughts that I had. I mean, I'm just like everybody else, had a congeries of thoughts.
Yeah, Congressman, I just want to ask you,
Yeah, they are.
Yes,
they are.
Yesterday was such a historic day, and it really shifted our nation. Where do you see our country going moving forward?
Well, I think historically this country is incredibly resilient. We have faced incredible dissension and discord, everything from the Civil War to the 60s to the assassination attempt of Ronald Reagan. But this country always bounces back.
Okay, here's OBS mic going. Testing. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3, OBS mic. For anyone watching on the live streams right now, come on over to X. Join me in the open discussion on the X space I have open. It's tagged at the top of my profile. So I'd love to hear your guys' 2 cents. I'm sitting here talking to myself and my fur babies. Come on, join the party.
And we move to what I call equilibrium, and that's the rule of law. And I think, and I hope and pray that that's where we go. We go back to the rule of law, where we can actually trust our government institutions, where right now there's incredible mistrust in the institutions, and that comes from everything from, abusing FISA power to the rhetoric that comes out that accuses people like Donald Trump of being Nazis or any of his followers. Remember, never forget the red speech of Joe Biden, and anybody who supports Donald Trump was couched as a Nazi or fascist. Those are the types of things I hope go away, and we get back to talking not crosswise with ad hominem attacks, but actually move into a series of discussions that allow us to credibly think of policy and how we invoke the rule of law and protect and preserve this great nation. I think that's what'll happen.
Yeah, civility. We need so much of it right now. You're always civil, sir. I want to bring you up to speed on 2 things that have just happened in the last couple of minutes. Justin News has just talked and confirmed this. The FBI does not believe that this shooter suffered from any mental illness, meaning his acts were intentional and willing. Secondly, they're treating it as an act of domestic terrorism. What are those 2 statements from the FBI just a few minutes ago tell you about where this investigation might head?
Well, I would not have thought this guy had mental illness based on what we've seen. So that's an important thing, because that indicates he was rational, made that rational choice. That's important, and it indicates that the investigation is going to go with who might have known of his planning. What did he let on? But the second thing is, this notion of calling it domestic terrorism, until you know that there's been some kind of relationship between this guy and some other people creating terrorism, it is what it is an assassination attempt. The problem with the FBI is they actually had the office in Charlottesville claimed that if you believed in the Latin Catholic Mass, that could be domestic terrorism. You had the DOD with doing a series of slideshows in training saying right to life and pro-life groups are domestic terrorists or potentially domestic terrorists. Let's not use that really loaded term. Let's call it what it is. This is an assassination attempt, and let's find out if it was solo or a conspiracy.
Congressman, here's what I want to ask you, because what I'm hearing here is a culmination of policies that have led us to where we were yesterday afternoon. And what I mean by that, the degradation of police departments around the country, the defund the police movements, the lowering of standards at the Secret Service, the U.S. military, and elsewhere, are all of these bad policy decisions, I'm just going to call them, they're bad policy decisions pursued by those on the left that resulted in this. Do we have not enough local law enforcement to do the job to secure the outside perimeter to help the Secret Service? Has the Secret Service lowered its standards to a point where we don't have the right people in the right positions to protect somebody like a president or a former president? As you look at this, is this the culmination, the predictable outcome of bad choices by politicians?
Well, Steve, I don't want to get into that fully because we haven't done the actual investigation, but I'm going to just piggyback on what you said. When you have the current Secret Service director saying that she's going to hire 30% women, that doesn't tell me that she's going to hire 30% of merit-based new employees. And that's what you want in your police forces. You want merit-based. You want people who are committed to doing the job, and you want to make sure that they have adequate training and funding. And this gets to what I was saying earlier. When you have training that focuses on DEI and ESG types of policies, which is what I think you're getting at, Steve, you undermine the notion of merit-based individuals coming in, and it also it weakens your structure, it weakens your morale, it weakens your training, and incredibly, it weakens the overall protection capabilities of the police forces. And don't forget, in these blue cities that actually defunded police, they decided they were going to go social services instead of protection. And what are they seeing? Higher crime, higher violent crime. It's almost always in blue cities who adopted these policies. And so, yeah, those are bad policy decisions. But let's find out here, because I just don't know how much was delegated to the local law enforcement to help Secret Service and the other protective units that were. Yeah.
Yeah, Congressman, I believe that's fair and a fair assessment. I appreciate you answering that. Clearly, we had a catastrophic failure yesterday, and we do need to have all the facts, but these are questions that are going to be posed to those that were involved with the situation. We certainly appreciate your input today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for what you're doing.
Really appreciate it. And he's right. We don't want to jump to conclusions, but these are all questions that are going to be asked, and obviously he's in a position to answer some of these important questions.
Absolutely. And, you know, he sits on judiciary. He's such a thoughtful investigator. He's not a guy that wants to get a political outcome and then tries to find the facts. He wants to find the facts and get the solution. And I think you saw that in what he just said, that is got to be what we got here. Facts and a decision that rises above politics.
That's right. Live from Milwaukee, this is Real America's Voice, continuing coverage of the attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump. July 13, 2024, Butler County, Pennsylvania. Just a horrible situation as we continue to sort it out. America basically in shock right now. We'll continue after this.
It's packed. Every seat, for the most part, is full. I say we could be doing 15,000.
President Trump set to rally voters in the Tidewater area of Virginia here in just a couple of hours.
If Trump carries Virginia, this thing is going to be a rout. He's going to win 35 states.
Someone's political career was murdered last night on stage.
Joe Biden is not competent.
He's not in any shape to run this country whatsoever.
This is a man that doesn't even know where he's at, doesn't even know his name, and he is running our country. I am terrified.
Biden wants to be paid by China and destroy America.